So Nancy Pelosi is en route to Taiwan, is expected to land in less than 2 hours there, I believe. China continues to saber rattle, but once again, I still think it's stupid that she goes. I still think it serves no purpose. I get it. We want to support Taiwan. Taiwan is a democratic nation. It's aligns with our values as Americans, and I 100% get on board with supporting China, but not right now. The reason is because, as I've said, China can be a very powerful ally in quelling Russia's aggression in Ukraine. They've already stated they're on the fence about what Russia's doing in Ukraine. If we can just get them on board with us, we might be able to jointly, as the two dominant powers in the world, convince Russia to stop this. But instead, we're antagonizing them. We're pissing them off. And make no mistake, I'm not afraid of China. I've said this in half a dozen videos. China will not win a war against the U.S., period. There's a measure of power that Michael Beckley uses in his book Unrivaled, and it is the taking a country's GDP, timesing it by its GDP per capita, and that's where you get a measure of power. I take it a little further. I multiply it again by purchasing power parity, and that way you can find who is generally more powerful of a country. When you do it that way, the United States is more powerful by an entire order of magnitude. Like, that means that the United States is 10 times more powerful than China right now. Which is why we have carriers sitting off China right now, and China doesn't have carriers sitting off our land. That's neither here nor there. I just don't think that this is going to produce an outcome that is good for anyone. I mean, Taiwan's economy is suffering. They've seen a 2% drop in their economy because of this, because of the fear that's coming out of this. And the problem is the U.S. is now seen as more of a belligerent in this situation. And I know that the Biden administration has reached out to Xi Jinping and said, this is Nancy Pelosi doing this, not the United States. Apparently she's flying over there in a private carrier, not on a U.S. government aircraft. I'm not sure if she's going to have a fighter escort, but as I've said before, it would be extraordinarily stupid for China to do anything drastic. Fully believe that they will step more into Russia's camp because of this, and that in and of itself is a bad thing. We want China to come around to our way of thinking, not the Russian way of thinking, and this is just not going to help that cause. However, China knows that it doesn't have the immediate power, nor does it have the long-term power to challenge the United States. I made a video about this. It doesn't have the ability to project enough power to secure its energy lanes coming out of the Middle East or coming from North America or South America or wherever they get their oil from. It doesn't have the power to project a military past the South China Sea, and therefore it already loses a war against the U.S. because the U.S. can defeat China outside of the South China Sea. China is surrounded by U.S. allies, to include former belligerents to the U.S., such as Japan, such as Vietnam. Those countries don't like China, specifically Japan and Vietnam. We have South Korea, we have Australia, the Philippines. All of these countries are not big fans of China, specifically the ones where the Chinese are taking islands from them. The Chinese are surrounded basically in the South China Sea by American allies, including Taiwan. And that ability is going to severely limit the calculus China has. Sure, they've developed missiles that they can fire and hit aircraft carriers. As if the aircraft carriers don't have countermeasures. They do. But supposedly they have this advanced missile. It doesn't do a whole lot of good when the U.S. is like, all right, well, you guys can't fly sorties and move equipment when you don't have oil, so we'll shut that off. You guys can't, it's going to be real tough for you guys to make money to fund this when we shut off your export economy. Funny and like an interesting situation. If you ever look into the Made in China, and this is kind of going off on a separate diatribe, but if you ever look at the Made in China thought process, we all complain we see everything's made in China. It says made in China. What that really means is it's assembled in China. 55% of everything that is made in China that the US uses has internal components made in the United States, and it really should just say assembled in China. China produces the end product and then slaps made in China on it. It doesn't really make anything of absolute value, because when it loses those inputs such as chips from the US, from Taiwan, from Japan, from Germany, when it loses those inputs, it can't make the end its And so what happens is its export economy shuts down. The US and all these other countries have the capability to make the end items and make the components. China does not. So when they lose those components, which would happen in a trade shutdown due to sanctions, China's economy collapses. Couple that with the destruction of the supply lines of oil and natural gas into China, and their economy further collapses. So I just want to point out that, and China knows this. They're not stupid. They're just frustrated, and they know that despite all the people they have, and they know they're going to be losing a lot of people here soon because of their very much dwindling demographics. They know that they still are beholden to a US that has generally absolute control of the major thoroughfare of the world, which is the oceans. And that frustrates them, and they even don't have control within their own backyard. They talk about the South China Sea. Sure, the South China Sea, they've gained strength there, but they've only got about enough power to take the first, maybe the second island chain, and that doesn't include Taiwan. They just don't have the strength to sustain a fight against Taiwan. And that's a whole nother video. And I've made that video before. And I might actually go live about that at some point in the next few days, just to dispel this myth that China's just going to absolutely steamroll Taiwan. We saw a very similar scenario in Russia when it comes to Ukraine. An absolutely, on paper, greater power in Russia than Ukraine. Ukraine is holding Russia back with Western equipment, Western intelligence, Western money. Here's the difference when it comes to Taiwan. Ukraine had 8 years to prepare for Russia. 2014 is when Crimea took place, and since then they've been building up while still trying to fight kind of small skirmishes in the Donbass against Russia. 8 years. Taiwan has had 70 years. They don't need Western equipment flows. They already have Western equipment. They don't need training on Western equipment. They've already been trained on Western equipment. They don't need funding from the US. Taiwan is one of the richest countries in the world. They don't need major defenses because they border China, because there's a strait there. It's a moat that China has to cross. They don't need intelligence from the US, even though they'll still get it. They have their own. Taiwan is 5 to 7 times at least more powerful than Ukraine. And they could hold their own fairly easily against China. And again, that's a whole nother video to go over the numbers and the eaches of that. But this is basically just a wrap-up of why I think it's completely stupid if China does something, but I also think that Nancy Pelosi is stupid for distancing a potential, I don't know, not necessarily an ally, but a potential helper in our attempt to stop Russia and what they're doing. So that's just a morning thought right there. We'll see what happens, but all of the sources are pointing that she should be landing in Taiwan here in the next few hours or so.